Chapter 1. Cracks beneath the surface. The mirror in the bedroom reflected a man who barely recognized himself anymore. Caleb Morgan adjusted the collar of his dark blue shirt, smoothing out imaginary wrinkles as he stood in silence. The faint scent of cologne lingered in the air, the same one Vanessa had gifted him 2 Christmases ago. He hadn't used it in a while, not since she stopped noticing the small things. From the hallway, her voice echoed, clipped and impatient. "Are you going to take all night? We're already late." "I'm coming," Caleb called back, checking his appearance one last time. He looked fine, presentable, neat, but he couldn't shake the feeling gnawing at the pit of his stomach, a tension that had grown over the past several months like a storm cloud refusing to move. Vanessa stood near the front door, tapping her heel against the hardwood floor with subtle annoyance. She was stunning, as always. Her dress clung to her frame like it had been stitched for her alone. Hair perfectly styled, lips a bold, daring red. But her eyes no longer looked at him the same. He smiled gently, reaching for his car keys. "You look beautiful." She didn't look up from her phone. "Thanks." He held the door for her. She walked past without acknowledgement. The drive to her parents' house was quiet, save for the low hum of tires against asphalt. Caleb stole glances at her as she typed away furiously on her phone, screen angled just enough to be unreadable from his side. Her lips twitched at whatever she was reading, something funny, maybe, but she never once turned the screen his way. "Work stuff?" he asked casually. "No," she replied, flat and uninterested. A beat passed. He nodded slowly. "All right." She turned to him then, face impassive. "Can we not do this tonight? Just play nice for a few hours." Caleb swallowed the bitter taste rising in his throat. "Sure, whatever you want." The house was already bustling when they arrived. Vanessa's family didn't wait for anyone. The scent of roasted chicken, garlic bread, and too many perfumes filled the air as Caleb stepped inside. Margaret was the first to greet them, or rather, greet Vanessa. The aging matriarch enveloped her daughter in a tight hug, her diamond-studded fingers clinking against Vanessa's necklace. "Oh, darling, finally! You're glowing tonight." Then her eyes flicked to Caleb, and the smile dropped a fraction. "And you?" "Caleb, good to see you, Margaret," he said politely. That was it. No handshake, no hug, no warmth. Just that disapproving, withering look she'd mastered years ago. They moved to the dining room, where the rest of Vanessa's family had gathered, her older brother Curtis, his bubbly wife Melanie, 2 of their cousins, and an aunt who always drank too much wine. A few people offered Caleb friendly nods, but the air was thick with the kind of familiarity that excluded him like a gate locked from the inside. Dinner began with strained laughter and small talk. Caleb tried to participate, asking Curtis about work, complimenting the meal, even sharing a harmless joke. But every time he spoke, Margaret found a way to undercut him. "So, still at that little IT firm, Caleb?" she asked loudly over the table. "It's a cybersecurity consultancy. Actually, we've just—" She cut him off with a laugh. "Right, consultancy. Sounds important. Must be nice to sit in front of a computer all day." There were chuckles from the table. Caleb glanced at Vanessa. She didn't even blink. "I enjoy what I do," he said quietly. Margaret poured herself another glass of wine, her lips curling. "I suppose someone has to enjoy it." Curtis jumped in with a football comment to steer things away, and Caleb let the conversation drift without him. His fingers tapped against his knee under the table. Vanessa was chatting with Melanie now, smiling in a way she hadn't at him in months. When their knees brushed accidentally, she didn't even acknowledge it. Halfway through dessert, Caleb got up to take a dish to the kitchen. As he turned to walk around the table, his elbow grazed Margaret's shoulder, and that's when it happened. The wine glass in her hand tipped slightly, and a few drops of deep red landed on her white blouse. There was a sharp, collective inhale from the table. "You disgusting man!" Margaret shrieked. Caleb's eyes widened. Margaret, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean." She rose from her seat, face flushed with anger. And then, smack, the sound of her palm against his cheek cracked through the room like a whip. A silence fell, so complete it felt like the oxygen had been vacuumed from the air. Caleb stumbled back a step, more shocked than hurt. His hand went to his cheek, burning from the impact. Margaret stood seething, pointing at her stained blouse. "Look what you've done." This was Chanel. "What kind of animal are you?" He turned, instinctively seeking the one person he expected to defend him. "Vanessa." His voice was low, wounded, hopeful. She looked at him as if he were a stranger. "You should have been more careful," she said coldly. "Just apologize to her. Or leave." For a moment, Caleb couldn't move. The betrayal was a knife to the gut, deep, twisting, and raw. The table remained frozen. Curtis looked stunned. Melanie covered her mouth. No one spoke. Caleb's gaze lingered on his wife, the woman he'd built a life with, the woman who didn't even flinch as her mother humiliated him. His heart pounded. The room suddenly felt too small. He took a step back, then another. He turned toward the door, his footsteps echoing against the hardwood floor. He didn't look back. Outside, the cold air hit him like a wave, but it was nothing compared to the storm brewing in his chest. He stood beside the car for a moment, staring at the front door, his cheeks still throbbing, but the ache inside him far worse. The woman he loved didn't just betray him in silence. She offered him up to be humiliated. Caleb opened the car door slowly, slid into the driver's seat, and stared at the wheel for a long time. Something inside him shifted, something that wasn't coming back. Chapter 2. The mask falls. The front door clicked shut behind Caleb with a quiet finality. He stood in the darkness of their home's foyer, unmoving. The silence inside was thick, almost accusing, a cold echo after the explosion at dinner. The warmth of the lights, the photos on the wall, the scent of lavender from the diffuser in the hallway, they all felt foreign, like someone else's house, like someone else's life. Caleb walked to the kitchen on autopilot. His fingers trembled slightly as he poured himself a glass of water. The reflection in the microwave door showed the faint red mark still lingering on his cheek. His jaw clenched at the memory of Margaret's hand crashing against his face. But what haunted him more was Vanessa's voice. "Apologize to her, or leave." He set the glass down with a quiet clink. This wasn't just about a slap. It hadn't been about the wine. This went deeper, like roots of rot beneath the floorboards. Vanessa hadn't even hesitated. There was no hesitation, no embarrassment, no instinct to protect him. She made a choice, and maybe she'd made it long before tonight. He slowly walked into the living room, the shadows stretching long around him. Something gnawed at his gut. The signs had been there, hadn't they? The gym membership she suddenly renewed after years of saying she hated working out. The extra client dinners that came out of nowhere. The way she took her phone with her to the bathroom every time. And the late-night texting, the half-hidden smirks. He had tried to ignore it. He told himself all marriages had seasons. But this felt different. Real. And now undeniable. Caleb stood still for a long moment in the darkened living room before something inside him hardened. No more guessing. No more hoping. If the mask was falling, he was going to rip it the rest of the way off. The next morning, Caleb got up earlier than usual. Vanessa was still asleep, sprawled across the bed like she hadn't betrayed him the night before. Her phone was on the nightstand, face down. He stared at it for a moment. He could have snooped, picked it up, tried a password, but he had a better idea. Caleb made coffee like nothing had happened. He even kissed her cheek before she left for a spin class. She barely noticed. Once the door shut behind her, he moved fast. He retrieved a slim black box from the back of the closet. A toolkit of sorts, left over from a contract job he'd done years ago. His IT days had made him good with software, but he'd also done some home automation work. Cameras, microphones, smart systems. Things most people didn't even think twice about. By noon, he'd installed 3 miniature HD pinhole cameras, one in the living room light fixture, one in the bookshelf frame, and one near the entrance to their bedroom. He wired 2 audio mics into common wall sockets. The cloud-based system would stream and store everything remotely. It wasn't just recording, it was archiving. He stood back afterward, arms crossed, surveying his work. The place looked untouched, ordinary, deceptively peaceful. But now it would whisper its secrets. The next 3 days were agonizing. He went to work, came home, played his part. Vanessa acted like nothing was wrong. She kissed him goodbye each morning, but never met his eyes. Her phone stayed glued to her hand. At night, she turned away from him in bed, claiming she was tired, or that her back hurt, or that she had an early morning. Caleb stopped trying. He was watching the feeds now, monitoring movement through his phone. The system sent alerts for sound spikes and motion triggers. On the fourth night, just after 7 o'clock p.m., he got the ping. Motion, living room. Then another ping, bedroom audio, voices. He put on his headphones and listened. Vanessa, you smell so much better than him. Male voice. That's because I shower more than once a week. Vanessa, laughing. You're such an ass. Male voice. And yet you're still on top of me. Caleb didn't breathe. He watched the live footage on his screen as the stranger, tall, muscled, shirt half unbuttoned, stepped into their bedroom, kissing Vanessa like it was his house, like it was his marriage. The bed that Caleb had built with his own hands, solid oak, groaned as Vanessa giggled, climbing on top of the man like a woman who'd never known shame. He watched every minute, not out of masochism, but clarity. This wasn't speculation anymore. This wasn't emotional distance or intimacy issues. This was betrayal, undeniable, brutal. When they finished, Vanessa curled beside the man and lit a cigarette, something she told Caleb she hated. The man, Travis, he would learn later, was already scrolling his phone. Cocky, loud, careless. Travis, you know, your boy's probably at some sad-ass bar right now, crying into his beer. Vanessa, snorting. He probably cried when he clipped his nails. God, he's so soft. Travis, honestly, you're doing him a favor. But he's too boring to even notice. He still wears those button-up polos, right? Vanessa, laughing. Oh my God, yes. I told my mom you'd love that. Caleb froze. Her mom, Margaret. The recording continued. Vanessa, she actually told me it's good I found someone like you. Said I deserved a man who could make me feel alive. Travis, she's got good taste. That old bat would probably climb on if I gave her a chance. They both burst into laughter. Caleb sat motionless, the glow from his laptop screen casting pale shadows on his face. His heartbeat didn't race. His hands didn't tremble. He just stopped feeling. It wasn't a burst of rage. It wasn't sobbing heartbreak. It was a numbness so sharp it bordered on surgical. His wife, her mother, her lover, all laughing, all smug, all so sure. They thought he was weak, that he'd never find out, that he'd never do anything. Caleb reached forward and closed the laptop slowly, the whir of the fan cutting off as the screen went black. Then, in silence, he stood up. He didn't rage. He didn't cry. He didn't shout. Instead, he went to the kitchen, made himself a cup of tea, sat at the counter, and began to plan. Chapter 3. The Setup. Caleb became the perfect husband on the surface. He started waking up before Vanessa, making her coffee just the way she liked it. Half and half. 2 sugars. He'd leave her sticky notes on the mirror with sweet words like, "You're beautiful today," or "Thanks for last night," even if last night had been another cold shoulder and muffled laughter behind the locked bathroom door. To Vanessa, it seemed like he'd folded. That slap, that public humiliation, he'd taken it. And now, he was practically groveling. It amused her. She even told Margaret how obedient he'd become lately. But Caleb wasn't being kind. He was gathering. Every act of sweetness was camouflage. Every polite gesture, every quiet nod, every feigned chuckle at Margaret's snide remarks. Each was another brick in the mask he wore. Behind that mask, Caleb had already started the process of surgical revenge. His first call was to Anthony Rivas, a divorce attorney known for his ruthless litigation style. Anthony wasn't cheap. But Caleb had a war chest tucked away in a separate bank account, a fund Vanessa didn't know existed. He'd always been practical like that. They met over lunch at a quiet bistro downtown. Caleb slid a flash drive across the table. "Start with this," Caleb said calmly. "I'll send more." Anthony plugged it into his tablet, brows lifting slightly as he watched a few seconds of the footage, Vanessa giggling, straddling another man in Caleb's own bedroom. "Well," the lawyer said with a low whistle, "this'll get me out of bed in the morning." Caleb sipped his black coffee. "I want everything done legally. No mess, no drama. But I want to leave her with nothing." Anthony smiled, teeth white and sharp. "That I can do." Next, Caleb hired Lenora Briggs, a former detective turned private investigator. She didn't need convincing. "Cheating wife," she said, jotting notes in her pad. "You wouldn't believe how common it is. I don't want just hotel footage. I want everything: phone records, text logs, GPS data, burner accounts. And I want intel on the guy she's sleeping with." "Name?" "Travis Keene." She raised an eyebrow. "You already know who he is?" Caleb's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I know everything. I just want more." Then came the real estate agents. He met 3 of them over the course of a week, each under the guise of exploring options, while Vanessa was at work or wherever she was pretending to be. One sleek woman named Talia walked him through the process of staging, valuation, and how to quietly list the house for serious buyers only. "I want a fast close," Caleb said. "No signs out front. Private listings only." Talia nodded. "Discreet relocation." "Understood." The movers were contacted 2 days later. Scheduled for late next month. 1 truck. 1 day. No trace left behind. He'd created a second storage unit across town under his brother's name. It was slowly being filled with his most valuable personal items: family heirlooms, financial documents, old photos, the contents of his safe, and even his guitars. Throughout it all, Vanessa grew bolder. She stopped pretending to care. She didn't delete messages from her phone anymore, just hid them in locked folders. She left for business trips, wearing outfits that weren't meant for boardrooms. Once, Caleb watched her walk into the bathroom for a shower while texting, only for a second phone to buzz inside her purse when she forgot to zip it shut. The audacity was staggering. But Caleb never confronted her. He smiled, kissed her on the temple, told her to enjoy her evening. The more she thought he was weak, the more careless she became. He even started recording her conversations at home using voice-activated devices he'd hidden in common areas. One night, he captured her whispering to Travis over speakerphone in their bedroom. "Vanessa, he's so pathetic, Trav. He brought me dinner tonight. Chicken Alfredo. Said he missed me." Travis, snickering. "That's what happens when you neuter a man." Vanessa, "Ugh. Honestly, I think he's scared I'll leave him." Travis, "He should be. You got options now. You got me." Caleb listened to that recording while washing dishes later, alone, hands trembling not from anger, but from resolve. She thought this was her power, her victory. She had no idea she was walking into a trap. A week later, Vanessa asked if Caleb would attend dinner again at her mother's house. He agreed without hesitation. "Really?" she asked, visibly surprised. "Why not?" he said with a soft smile. "Maybe it'll be good to show them we're working things out." Vanessa eyed him for a long second, like she was trying to see if he was bluffing. But the performance was flawless. Caleb had practiced every expression in the mirror. Margaret opened the door that evening with her usual sneer. "Well, if it isn't the ghost." "Good to see you too, Margaret," Caleb said smoothly, stepping past her without waiting for permission. Dinner was another theatrical performance. Vanessa laughed too loudly. Margaret made a dozen digs about real men and career ambition. Curtis tried to ask about Caleb's job, but Margaret quickly redirected the conversation to Vanessa's glow-up and how some women just age better than others. Caleb didn't bite. He didn't flinch. He passed the potatoes with a smile, complimented the wine, even asked Margaret about her antique necklace collection. She was thrown off, and that made her dig deeper. "So, Caleb," Margaret said, swirling her glass, "tell me, does it hurt being married to someone who's out of your league? Or have you finally made peace with that?" Vanessa snorted. "Mom, come on, he's trying." Caleb tilted his head. "Actually, Margaret, I've come to appreciate being underestimated." "Oh, why's that?" He sipped his wine. "It gives me room to surprise people." There was a beat of silence. Margaret gave a sarcastic smile. "Well, I do hope you surprise Vanessa sometime soon. She's a young woman with needs, you know." "Mother," Vanessa said, laughing. "Stop. He knows I don't belong to him." The room tensed. Vanessa leaned back, crossing her arms, eyes glittering with mischief. "Yeah, let's be honest here, Caleb. You don't own me. What I do with my body is my legal right. You should remember that." Curtis and Melanie stopped chewing. Margaret raised an eyebrow, clearly enjoying the show. Then Vanessa grinned cruelly. "Maybe you should try being a real man." Caleb looked at her, smiling gently. But inside, he was ice. Chapter 4. D-Day. The day Caleb had planned for weeks, quietly, precisely, without a hint of suspicion, had finally arrived. The morning was cool and silent, the sky gray but calm, as if the universe itself were holding its breath. Caleb stood at the kitchen window, coffee in hand, staring into the backyard where the summer wind shifted the trees like dancers in morning. Today, everything changed. He had texted Vanessa 2 days prior. "I've been thinking. I want to try one last time, for peace, for closure. Let's have dinner. You, me, your mother, and even Travis. You were right. I need to face things head on." The bait was simple. The promise of control. Vanessa had no reason to suspect he was anything but broken, submissive, and she had always enjoyed the power of being 2 steps ahead. She replied, "Finally, maybe there's hope for you yet." Travis responded with a thumbs-up emoji. Margaret sent no reply, but Caleb didn't need one. She never missed a chance to gloat. By 6:45 p.m., the house was immaculate. The dining table was set with Caleb's best plates, candles flickering gently in silver holders. Soft classical music hummed through the speakers. The food was catered and untouched. Presentation mattered more than taste tonight. But the real centerpiece? A 72-inch screen positioned behind the dinner table, draped in a black cloth, facing the seats. The trigger was in Caleb's pocket, a small, wireless remote he'd tested 100 times. The footage was loaded, the files were sorted, and revenge had been dressed in civility. At exactly 7 o'clock p.m., the doorbell rang. Caleb opened the door to find Vanessa looking smug in a crimson dress that clung too tightly to her curves. Travis stood beside her, hands in his pockets, chewing gum like a teenager. Margaret, as usual, entered without waiting, wrinkling her nose at the scent of rosemary in the air. "Well," she said, tossing her purse on the couch. "At least the place smells clean." Vanessa gave Caleb a once-over. "You look not bad. That blazer's new." "I wanted to make a good impression," Caleb said calmly. Travis smirked. "Hope the food's better than last time. I nearly choked on that dry chicken." Caleb gestured to the table. "Please sit." They did. Caleb took his seat last, across from Vanessa. He poured wine into 4 glasses. His hand was steady. Margaret picked up hers and muttered, "Finally, some class." "I'd like to propose a toast," Caleb said, lifting his glass. "To honesty." "To healing," Vanessa added mockingly. They all drank. Caleb set his glass down. Then, with 2 fingers, he reached into his blazer pocket and pressed the remote. The room dimmed. The black cloth dropped. The screen flickered to life. And then, the room fell silent. At first, no one could process what they were watching. Vanessa, on her knees, topless, laughing breathlessly as she kissed Travis against the headboard. Another clip, her whispering into his ear, "He still thinks I'm at yoga." A third, them in the car, parked outside a motel, exchanging money for a hotel room. There were timestamps, GPS data, audio overlays, each scene damning, unavoidable, irrefutable. Travis coughed. "What the hell is this?" Vanessa froze, pale as parchment. Her hand trembled around the wine glass. Margaret stared at the screen in mute horror as her daughter's moans echoed through the house. "I thought tonight was about peace," Vanessa whispered. "It is," Caleb said. "My peace." He clicked again. The screen switched. This time, it wasn't Vanessa. It was Travis. A mugshot, then documents. Convictions, 2 sealed juvenile cases, a dismissed assault charge in his 20s, and a recent probation violation Caleb had uncovered through his PI. "Oh, come on," Travis barked. "That's all ancient." Caleb raised a hand, silencing him. "I've already sent this footage to your parole officer," Caleb said coolly, "along with documentation showing you entered my home multiple times without my consent. That's entrapment." Travis stood up. "Sit down, Travis," Caleb said, voice cold enough to stop him mid-motion. "Or I'll stream this on Facebook next." Margaret stood, horrified. "This is insane. You've gone mad." "I'm not done," Caleb replied, stepping forward. He turned to Vanessa. "As of this morning, the house no longer belongs to us. I moved it into a trust under my name alone. I also sold both cars. The accounts? Drained and redirected. You'll find your credit cards declined by morning. Vanessa gasped, blinking rapidly. You can't do that. That's illegal. No, Caleb said. Adultery and emotional abuse are grounds for legal separation. The Attorney General has my case. I filed for divorce today, using everything on that screen. Irrefutable evidence. I won't owe you a penny. Margaret lunged forward. This is my daughter you're talking to. How dare you? Caleb didn't flinch. Let's talk about you, Margaret. He clicked the remote again. Now it showed doorbell camera footage. Margaret was outside someone's house. An elderly woman sobbing while Margaret raised her hand and slapped her across the cheek. A slow-motion replay. The audio enhanced. You senile old witch, stay out of my damn garden. Caleb turned to her. That's Mrs. Florence's mother. She has Alzheimer's. You struck her on camera. Margaret's face contorted. That was taken out of context. I've already submitted the footage to the Board of Nursing and the HOA. Your license will be suspended pending investigation. You'll likely never practice again. The room collapsed into chaos. Margaret screamed. Vanessa started sobbing, pushing herself back from the table. Travis made for the door. Caleb stood in his way. No, Caleb said. You'll leave when I say so. Vanessa fell to her knees. Literally. Tears streaked her mascara as she clutched Caleb's leg. Please. Caleb, please. I was wrong. I got lost. I didn't think you still loved me. I made mistakes. But we can fix this, please. Margaret stammered, hands shaking. He's bluffing. You're bluffing. This isn't who you are. Caleb looked down at Vanessa, who was still sobbing, her pride shattered. Then he looked at Margaret, at Travis, and finally at the wreckage of what once was his family. His voice was calm. I see. Dead still. You told me I don't own you, he said quietly. And now, I don't even recognize you. Chapter 5. Ashes. The fallout didn't happen all at once. It was slow, brutal, surgical, like watching a building collapse in controlled demolition. Each support beam removed, each floor crashing down until only dust and shame remained. It started with Vanessa. Just 3 days after Caleb's peace dinner, she received notice that the utilities to the house would be shut off: electricity, water, and gas. The ownership had officially transferred into the trust, and Caleb's attorney ensured the divorce filing made clear. She had no claim. The locks had already been changed. Her bank cards stopped working next. She stood in front of an ATM on Main Street, jabbing buttons with trembling fingers while people queued behind her. Insufficient funds, the screen read. She tried another. Account closed. Her breath quickened. She pulled out her phone and called Caleb again. Blocked. She dropped to the sidewalk in disbelief. People walked around her like she was invisible. Later that night, she arrived at her mother's house, dragging 2 suitcases and a tote bag. Her eyes were puffy. Her makeup was smeared. Margaret opened the door, and her face fell. Don't tell me. I have nothing, Mom, Vanessa whispered, pushing inside. Margaret shut the door behind her and sighed heavily. He did all this in secret? That snake. Vanessa collapsed on the couch. He planned it. All of it. The footage, the trust, the financials. It wasn't just revenge. It was war. Margaret didn't answer. Her own battles were closing in. The nursing board's official letter came that Thursday. Margaret was temporarily suspended pending an investigation into elder abuse. The footage Caleb submitted, a high-definition clip of her slapping the elderly woman in broad daylight, had gone viral online after someone leaked it. It took only hours for the local media to pick up the story. Local nurse caught abusing elderly woman on camera. Her Facebook page was flooded with comments. Disgusting. She shouldn't be allowed near vulnerable people. Trashy family. Her daughter's a known cheater too. Apple didn't fall far. Isn't that the woman who slapped her son-in-law in public? Margaret tried to defend herself. She even held a shaky, poorly lit video where she blamed stress and provocation. No one believed her. Her weekly brunches with the church ladies dried up. Her phone calls went unanswered. And worst of all, the nursing home she volunteered at banned her permanently. For a woman who once held her reputation like a shield, it was a death blow. Meanwhile, Travis vanished. Vanessa hadn't heard from him since the dinner. His number rang twice, then disconnected. Days later, she saw a Reddit post that made her heart stop. PSA. Don't trust this man. Travis Y. from Fort Ridge is a con artist. The post listed screenshots of him promising fake investment schemes, including messages to other women he'd seduced. One woman claimed he borrowed $6,000 and never returned it. 2 weeks after Caleb's reveal, Travis was arrested in another county for fraud. Vanessa stared at the screen in disbelief. Even he had abandoned her. Then came the online humiliation. Caleb, with calculated precision, uploaded a detailed, anonymous expose to a popular cheating forum and YouTube channel. It was titled, "She Told Me Her Body Was Her Legal Right, so I showed her what consequences look like." He blurred faces, changed names, but anyone who knew them could read between the lines. The footage of Vanessa with Travis wasn't posted, but described in brutal clarity. Her insults were quoted. Margaret's slap was included. The post went viral. Over 1.2 million views. The comments were savage. She got what she deserved. That man's a legend. Vanessa sounds like a textbook narcissist. I hope she's watching this from her tiny apartment right now. Vanessa was watching from a dimly lit, one-bedroom apartment where cockroaches crawled under the sink and the walls smelled like mildew. The mattress was on the floor. The fridge was half empty. She used burner Wi-Fi from the cafe below just to stay online. And yet, she tried, again and again. Voicemails, letters, emails from new accounts. One came in at 2:12 a.m. "Caleb, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I was selfish and stupid, and I miss you so much. You didn't deserve any of this. Please just call me back. Let me explain. I'm still your wife, another. Please, Caleb. I need closure. You don't have to forgive me. Just talk to me. Yell at me if you have to. I'm losing my mind." One letter was handwritten. Tear stains marked the ink. It smelled faintly of her perfume. "You were right. About everything. About Travis. About Mom. About me. I ruined the best thing I ever had. I'm not asking for another chance. I just want to say thank you for loving me once. For putting up with me when I didn't deserve it. I see it now." Caleb never opened the next letter. He didn't need to. Margaret tried too, but she didn't beg. She guilt-tripped. One voicemail. "Caleb, after everything I did for you, for Vanessa, you destroy us like this? You think you're a hero? You're a vindictive little coward. I hope karma finds you." Another. "You think you'll be happy, living alone in that empty house? You'll die alone. You'll realize too late what you threw away." Caleb deleted both. He wasn't bitter. Not anymore. He spent more time at the gym now. Got a better haircut. Took long walks in the forest preserve near the edge of town. He even joined a photography group, something he'd once told Vanessa he wanted to do, back when she laughed and said, "Who even has time for hobbies?" He had time now. He had peace. One day, while sipping coffee at a cafe downtown, he overheard two women talking at a nearby table. She was so full of herself. "Did you see the video? You mean the cheating wife who got exposed by her husband? Oh my God, yes. She used to be on that PDA board." Caleb smirked behind his cup and said nothing. He walked out into the sun, the breeze cool against his face. He didn't need revenge anymore. He already won. Vanessa sat alone on her apartment floor that same night. She replayed Caleb's voicemail inbox, only to hear the robotic voice say, "The number you have dialed is no longer in service." She scrolled social media aimlessly, pausing at a photo of Caleb, new haircut, laughing with a group of hikers. One woman stood beside him, smiling. Vanessa stared at the screen. A tear slipped down her cheek. Then another, and another. But there was no one left to wipe them away. Only the echo of her own words from that night at dinner. Words that now haunted her like a ghost. "You don't own me." She had meant it as a taunt. But now it was a curse. Chapter 6. Resurrection. The first morning in his new city felt like breathing again. Caleb Morgan stood on the balcony of his modest but sunlit apartment, sipping strong black coffee as the early autumn breeze brushed against his face. A new city, a new chapter, one far removed from the ashes he left behind. The skyline shimmered with potential, not pain. He had moved 4 states away, leaving behind the wreckage of his old life, the betrayal, the lies, the house that echoed with memories he no longer wanted to remember. Here, in this quiet corner of a growing city, no one knew his name. No one had seen the video. No one whispered in supermarket aisles or watched him with curiosity. He was Caleb Morgan, software consultant by trade, avid reader, recent jogger, and survivor. It didn't happen overnight. Healing never does. After the dust settled, Caleb spent weeks in therapy, his idea, not anyone else's. He talked. He shouted. He sat in long silences. He unlearned years of silent suffering and slow erasure. And through it all, he journaled. Page after page of thoughts, memories, and realizations poured out like poison being drained from a wound. Then one day, he came across a local nonprofit while browsing online. The Phoenix Group, a support organization for betrayed spouses and partners. He attended a meeting out of curiosity. That meeting changed everything. He became a regular first, then a volunteer. Then, with time, part of the group's mentorship circle. They didn't know him as the man who exposed his cheating wife with a cinematic twist. They knew him as Caleb, the guy who brought donuts on Sundays, listened more than he spoke, and always ended with, "You're not alone. You're not broken." It was during one of those volunteer events that he met her. Leah. She wasn't like Vanessa. She didn't command a room or drip with artificial charm. Leah was soft-spoken, with kind eyes, laughter that crept up on you, and a way of listening that made you feel unburdened. She was one of the guest speakers, a counselor who specialized in trauma recovery. Caleb first noticed her when she made a joke about oat milk during a coffee break. He laughed harder than he meant to. "I'm serious," she grinned, holding up her cup. "This tastes like regret and tree bark." Caleb smirked. Finally, someone brave enough to say it. That was their first conversation. It wouldn't be their last. Weeks passed. They saw more of each other, at events, on walks, at bookstores. It was easy, unforced. Sometimes they didn't talk at all, and simply sat under the tall city oaks, sipping coffee and watching leaves drift like amber feathers. One evening, Caleb found himself standing on her porch, hands in his pockets, heart drumming in his chest. "I want to tell you something," he said quietly. Leah tilted her head. "Okay. I was married," he said. "Her name was Vanessa. She cheated on me. It got ugly. I found a way to expose everything. It wasn't peaceful. It was explosive. I burned it all down." He waited for her expression to twist, to flinch, to look at him differently. It didn't. Instead, she stepped closer, voice gentle. "You survived hell, and you didn't let it turn you cruel. That's not ugly, Caleb. That's brave." Something inside him cracked, and for the first time in years, he felt seen. Their relationship didn't rush. It grew like wildflowers, slow, deliberate, rooted in trust. She didn't flinch when he confessed the depth of his past pain. She didn't judge when he admitted the moments he'd cried alone or the guilt he felt for enjoying his revenge. And when she shared her own story of being ghosted after 3 years by a man she thought would propose, he didn't offer advice. He just held her hand and said, "That wasn't your fault." They cooked together, laughed often, and took weekend hikes through misty woods. Leah loved poetry, and Caleb found himself reading more of it, not to impress her, but because her eyes lit up whenever she quoted it. One night, while they watched the city lights from his balcony, she leaned against him and whispered, "You're different than when I first met you." Caleb looked down at her. Better or worse? Calmer, softer, like someone who's stopped bracing for the next heartbreak. He exhaled slowly. "For a long time, I felt like everything good in life had a knife hidden behind it. And now," he looked out into the horizon, "now I think some things are good just because they are." She smiled, and it felt like sunrise. The contrast to Vanessa was overwhelming. Vanessa, who once mocked him for wanting to try pottery. Leah, who signed them up for a beginner's class and got clay on her nose. Vanessa, who rolled her eyes when he cried during a movie. Leah, who held his hand and whispered, "It's okay. I cried last time." Vanessa, who said, "You don't own me." Leah, who said, "You don't owe me anything, just be you." Caleb never blocked Vanessa's last letter. He kept it tucked in a box, unopened. Maybe one day, he'd read it. But not today. Today was for healing. for quiet joy, for a woman who saw the cracks in him and chose to stay anyway. They weren't perfect, but they were real. And for Caleb Morgan, that was enough. Chapter 7. The Final Letter. The envelope was cream-colored and slightly crumpled, the handwriting instantly familiar, Vanessa's. It had no return address, no markings, just his name in looping, elegant cursive. Caleb Morgan. He found it nestled among utility bills and a grocery circular one chilly October afternoon. Leo was still at the clinic, and the house was silent except for the faint ticking of the clock in the living room. The dog, Chester, their golden retriever rescue, lay snoring at his feet. Caleb stared at the envelope for a long while, unmoving. He hadn't heard from Vanessa in over 9 months. Not since she sent that last email begging him to meet her in person, just one chance to explain. He never replied. He didn't need to. Everything he needed to know had been revealed in high definition on his living room screen a year ago. And yet here it was. Her words, likely her last. Not a text. Not an email. A letter. Handwritten. Old school. Personal. Vulnerable. He debated throwing it out unopened. He almost did. But something in him, the part that once loved her deeply, the part that spent 10 years building a life together, the part that still bore faint scars, said, "Read it, then let it go." Caleb walked to the porch with the envelope, poured himself a cup of black coffee, and sat in the worn wooden chair where he now spent his peaceful mornings. Chester trotted out behind him and lay down with a grunt. He opened the letter. "Caleb, if you're reading this, I want you to know I'm not writing to ask for anything. Not forgiveness. Not pity. I don't deserve either. I just need to say what I should have said long ago. I was arrogant, entitled. I thought I could do no wrong because I was miserable and blamed you for it. You were good to me, patient, loyal, loving, and I treated you like a burden I didn't ask for. My mother always said I deserved a man who would chase me, worship me. But the truth is I had that. I just didn't value it until I lost it. I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me. Travis? He left. The moment everything came crashing down, he bolted like a coward. Turns out, he was using me for money and a place to stay. I lost my job 6 months ago. Word got around. People knew what I'd done. I tried starting over, but there's no erasing a reputation. Mom's under investigation, as you know. We barely talk now. She blames me for everything, but I know it was both of us. I've been living in a small one-bedroom in a bad part of town. Some nights, I just lie awake wondering how I ever let it come to this. You once told me love was a choice you made every day. I mocked you for it, but I get it now. I see now that I never made the choice to truly love you. I only chose myself. I hope you're happy now, Caleb. I hope you found someone who actually deserves your heart. You'll probably never respond, and that's okay. I wouldn't either. But for what it's worth, I am sorry. Truly. Vanessa. Caleb sat there for a moment, eyes still on the final word. There was no anger in him, no fire building in his chest, no smug satisfaction, just silence. He thought about the early years with Vanessa, when they danced barefoot in the kitchen, when she'd laugh so hard she cried, when she'd fall asleep on his chest during storms. Before her contempt began to drip into every sentence. Before the secrets. Before the betrayal. He had loved her once. Deeply. But that love had died the day she humiliated him at her mother's table and told him to apologize for being slapped. The rest, the affair, the gaslighting, the smug declarations of autonomy over shared vows, had only been the autopsy. Now, her letter felt like the final nail on a coffin he'd buried long ago. Closure didn't come in the form of revenge, he realized. Not really. That was justice. Closure came when you stopped bleeding from the wound. He folded the letter neatly, stood up, and walked over to the fire pit in the backyard. With one flick of his thumb, the lighter sparked, and the edges of the paper began to curl and blacken. Flames danced up the confession until all that remained were ashes drifting away in the wind. That night, Caleb and Leah sat on the porch together, wrapped in a shared blanket. The stars were faint above the city's glow, but the moon was full and clear. She leaned into him, head on his shoulder. "You've been quiet all evening." "I got a letter," Caleb said, eyes fixed on the horizon. From her. Leah didn't flinch. She waited. She admitted everything. Regret. Pain. Loneliness. Said she lost the only man who loved her. Did you respond? He shook his head. I burned it. She reached over and took his hand, running her fingers along the back of it. He looked at her, and for a moment he saw the two lives he'd lived. One built on illusion and betrayal. The other, this one, built on honesty, patience, kindness. You seem lighter lately, Leah said gently, brushing his cheek with her thumb. Caleb exhaled a slow, peaceful breath. That's because I stopped carrying ghosts. They sat there for a while longer, wrapped in warmth, while the night air whispered through the trees. And as dawn crept over the horizon, coloring the sky with soft gold and crimson, Caleb Morgan watched the sun rise, not just over the city, but over his new life. A life free. A life he had built, brick by quiet brick after the fire. Epilogue. New dawn. The city was waking slowly, the early morning light spilling through the tall windows of Caleb's new apartment. The space was simple but filled with soft sunlight, plants, and a few books that had replaced the clutter of his old life. Caleb stood at the window, sipping his coffee, watching people hurry to their jobs, couples walking dogs, children laughing on their way to school. Life, quiet, ordinary, and steady, unfolded below him. It was a stark contrast to the chaos he'd left behind. The shattered trust, the sting of betrayal, the relentless storm of anger and humiliation. He thought about Vanessa's letter again, how she had finally admitted everything, laid bare the ruins of their marriage. Yet it was not vengeance or regret that defined him now. It was something quieter, more profound. Forgiveness was not about them. It was about freeing himself. Leah appeared in the doorway, her smile warm and genuine. Coffee's getting cold. Caleb smiled back, feeling a peace he hadn't known in years. Thank you for being my calm in the storm. She walked over and took his hand. He squeezed it gently. Here's to new beginnings, Leah said softly. To finally living, Caleb replied. He turned back to the window, the rising sun casting long shadows across the room. The ghosts of the past no longer haunted him. He was ready for whatever came next.